Gary Bettman, commissioner of the NHL, recently gave an address where he outlined how and when we're going to get hockey back. And in this episode of My Thoughts, I'm going to explain everything he said that I think is important to us and tell you what I like and dislike about the situation. The regular season is over, and no more of those games will be played. With that out of the way, let's talk about the playoffs. Instead of the usual 16 teams, there will be 24 teams in this year's postseason tournament. The top 4 teams in each conference will participate in a round-robin tournament to determine seeding of the first official round. And when I say top teams, I mean highest by point percentage in the regular season. And that's what I will continue to mean throughout the rest of the video, unless otherwise noted. Those teams are the Bruins, Lightning, Capitals, Flyers, Stars, Knights, Avalanche, and Blues. Well, what is a round-robin tournament? In this case, it means that each team will play the other 3 teams in their conference under regular season rules one time each. If there's a tie between 2 teams, then the team who did better in the regular season will have the higher seed. First place in each conference will play the winner of the 8 and 9 seed. Second place will play the winner of the 7 and 10 seed. Third place will play the winner of the 6 and 11 seed. Fourth place will play the winner of the 5 and 12 seed. The idea here is that the best team from the round-robin tournament will have the lowest ceiling when it comes to seeds. The highest first place can play as the 8 seed, as opposed to the 7, 6, or 5 seed. The next top 8 teams in each conference will not be in this round-robin, but they will all play in a new play-in first round of the playoffs, which will very likely not be a 7-game series. The second round may not be either, but the conference finals and Stanley Cup finals will absolutely be 7 games. There's no information on the exact dates for when they plan to start all of this, but we have rough dates. Players will start going back to train at their team facilities in June. Training camps will open no earlier than July 1st, probably later, so hockey's not quite back yet. My thoughts on the playoff. Well, I like parts of this, and I hate other parts of this. Firstly, I really like the idea that any team who had a legitimate chance for the playoffs should get the chance to play in. I know people are upset at teams like the Canadiens and Blackhawks getting in, but they were promised more chances to earn their way in, and they just didn't get those. In my eyes, it's the fairest way. Some people will say things like, it's not fair that the Penguins and Oilers were good all year, and that they have to play in a 5-game series to even get into the real playoffs, and that a 5-game series makes an upset for them far more likely. Yes, those teams are clearly better, and yes, a smaller sample size, the better team is less likely to win. But here's the thing, hockey's never fair. This is why we love the sport, and this is why we also hate it. Whether it be 5 or 7 games, variance and unpredictability are what you sign up for in the hockey playoffs every year, not just this one. If you want the team that's clearly better to win the series most of the time, then the sport you want is probably basketball. With that being said, I actually conceptually prefer the basketball style. I like things to be fair and lawful, but it almost never is in hockey. So I don't know why we're drawing those arbitrary lines with these play-in series. Another thing I like about this is the round robin. 7 out of the 8 teams were still jousting for seeding, and they'll still get a chance to play for it, even if it's a lot less meaningful this year without home ice. The only team this hurts is the Bruins. I also appreciate that it serves as games to warm up, so both the top teams and the playoff teams will have played meaningful games before the 16-team playoffs. But this is where I segue into the thing that I absolutely hate about this plan. No regular season games? At all? Are we seriously expecting players to ramp it up to playoff level hockey just from training camp? I think that's kind of ridiculous and a lot to expect. So many players are going to get injured because they aren't allowed to ramp up properly, because practicing with your team is just not the same intensity as playing against another team. Even if they were meaningless games, I think a much better idea would to bring the 24 teams to have a chance to make the playoffs back to play 5 to 8 regular season games that would have no effect on the standings. It would be like another preseason. This would allow them to warm up properly. But to expect these guys, after 4 months of not playing, to go directly from a month of training camp to playing the most intense hockey of their lives is super dangerous. I'm predicting an unusually high number of hamstring injuries and muscle tears. This could greatly affect the career trajectories of many players, and they could miss out on millions of dollars that they could have otherwise made. Imagine if there are serious long-term injuries to some of the league's best players because they didn't take their time. How is the league going to recover from that? Why aren't we taking our time, and why are we putting players at unnecessary risk? Either I'm missing something, or I'm just plain wrong, which happens. Or this is a massive oversight by everyone involved in the decision-making process. Now on to the draft lottery. The draft will include the 7 teams excluded from the 2014 bracket and the 8 teams that are eliminated in the play-in series. Each team is assigned a percentage of winning the lottery, and 3 winners are selected, and they get the top 3 draft picks. If any of the top 7 teams win the lottery, then they get that pick. But if any of the remaining 8 teams get that pick, it is not given to any team specifically. Since at the time of the lottery, the play-in rounds will not be finished, we don't know which teams will be in it. So instead, a placeholder gets that pick. If any placeholders win the lottery, then a second one will be held. In the second one, the 8 teams that lost in the play-in round will all have an equal chance of getting that pick, 1 in 8 or 12.5%. For example, let's say that on the first lottery night, the Senators get the first overall pick with their San Jose pick, and the second overall pick goes to the Kings, and placeholder Team D gets the third overall pick. Then each of the 8 teams who lost in the play-in round will have an equal chance at the third overall pick. So what do I think about the draft lottery? Like the playoffs, I have things that I like and things that I don't like about this. Well, firstly, I like that it's complicated. I know that sometimes the league is afraid of making things complicated because they're worried that fans will misunderstand, something that I think is a little insulting. So I like that they're trying to make it the best that they can, even if it means it's a little confusing to some people. And while it's imperfect, I think it's pretty fair. None of the top 7 teams have different odds than they were told they were going to get. The teams that are bad and could also use a high pick and don't get past the play-in rounds still have a fair chance. Of course, there are problems with it, like how Pittsburgh is a really great team and shouldn't have any chance at the first overall pick. Same thing with the Oilers to a lesser extent. This year, we have a great chance of a top 3 pick going to a good team. Also, some lottery teams have a greater chance of winning than they otherwise would simply because the play-in round exists, like the Jets. What I would have done is give the top 7 teams greater odds than they have now, but only slightly. This helps some of the problems I just mentioned. Also, in the second lottery, I wouldn't give every team an equal chance of getting the top pick. I would sort the chances by their regular season winning percentage. So, that's all I have to say about everything. I am super concerned about players getting injured above all else. But other than that, I'm really excited to have hockey back, just like I'm sure we all are. Thanks for watching.